Was known to use freckle cream to hide her freckles. There's still a chance that she's out there, and we're going to keep looking for her.
For decades, the name Amelia Earhart has echoed with two words: vanished without a trace. It's a story we thought we knew. A heroic aviator, a daring flight, and a sudden, heartbreaking disappearance over the vast Pacific. But what if I told you that the truth, only recently brought to light by cutting-edge technology and a relentless pursuit of answers, isn't just different, it's far more terrifying and utterly profoundly human. Get ready, because today we're rewriting aviation's darkest mystery forever, Amelia Earhart. The very name conjures images of courage, adventure, and the boundless American spirit. She was a celebrity, a trailblazer, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. So, when she and her navigator, Fred Noonan, vanished somewhere over the Pacific on July 2nd, 1937, it wasn't just a tragedy, it was a global enigma that froze nations. Her last desperate radio call, "We must be on you, but cannot see you, fuel running low," became the haunting fulcrum of an 88-year nightmare. The world searched frantically, combing over 250,000 square miles of glittering ocean, yet found nothing. No oil slick, no wreckage, no trace. The official verdict was blunt. The Electra simply ran out of fuel and dove to oblivion. But human imagination hates an empty verdict. That blank space where proof should have rested became a breeding ground for wild legends, spies, secret captures, even alien abduction. Through wars, moon landings, and smartphone revolutions, Amelia's ghost kept pacing that strip of sky, daring every new generation to solve her riddle. Yet, behind the sensational headlines and endless theories, investigators quietly built case files. Stacks of navigational charts, handwritten fuel tallies, and declassified military intercepts were fed into powerful new digital models, reconstructing every gust of wind on Earhart's final leg. And one variable rose above the data haze: the astonishing precision demanded by a 2,500-mile flight to a target smaller than Central Park. Even a half-degree heading error meant missing their tiny destination, Howland Island, by 60 nautical miles, far enough that no radio call could save them. By the 21st century, forensic cartographers, flight surgeons, and crash site psychologists had mapped dozens of mutually exclusive crash zones, each defended like sacred scripture. The clamor reached fever pitch in 2023 when a leaked internal memo from the National Transportation Safety Board hinted at an upcoming breakthrough. It spoke of newly correlated positional data and the involvement of an autonomous underwater vehicle operating beyond 5,000 meters. The memo was vague, but the implication was electric. For the first time since the Roosevelt administration, someone might actually be close. Bloggers erupted, hedge funds financed private expeditions, and TikTok sleuths spun elaborate 3D conspiracy diagrams. The world held its breath. Then, on a windswept January night in 2024, Tony Romeo, the CEO of an ocean exploration company called Deep Sea Vision, stepped before cameras in Charleston. He told the world his drone had photographed something on the Pacific floor that looked very much like a twin-engine Lockheed. The press conference lasted 9 minutes. The shockwave it triggered is still expanding. Because if Romeo was right, every map, every textbook, every bedtime story about Amelia Earhart was about to be torn open. And what scientists found next would make the planet hold its breath. So how did they find it after all these decades? It all came down to a theory that sounded too simple to be true: the dateline trap. Fred Noonan was a master navigator, capable of finding stars with spooky accuracy, but the cosmos demands perfect paperwork. In 2010, Liz Smith, a former NASA flight dynamics engineer who moonlighted as a recreational pilot, ran Earhart's celestial fixes through advanced software and slammed into a numerical brick wall. The timestamp on Noonan's final sextant shot was 1 day off. That tiny clerical slip, after 17 hours of bone-rattling vibration, caffeine pills, and tropical heat, meant every subsequent bearing skewed 60 nautical miles west. A fatal offset when chasing a runway measured in yards. Smith published her calculations on an obscure forum for retired aviators. For years, they languished, dismissed as another armchair thesis, until Deep Sea Vision's analytics team encountered them. While machine learning bots scraped the internet for unconventional search grids, the algorithm flagged Smith's coordinates as a high-impact outlier. Tony Romeo read the printout at 3:00 a.m., drank 2 espressos, and greenlit a survey corridor no one else had ever touched. Years later, he would marvel that a global hunt costing tens of millions pivoted on a single unchecked calendar cell. Yet, the Dateline trap was credible precisely because it was human. It didn't require kidnappers or covert carriers, only exhaustion and the Earth's own arithmetic quirks. Modern simulations validated the chain reaction, feed the erroneous date into astronavigation software, allow for wind shear recorded by 1937 weather ships, and the projected flight path snakes like a reluctant S-curve directly toward the abyss where deep-sea vision eventually found its sonar echo. Meanwhile, aviation. Psychologists reconstructed cockpit stress levels. Fuel tanks sloshed below minimums. The HF radio sputtered. Earhart's knuckles would have been whitening on the yoke. She would have relied on Noonan's celestial fix as gospel. Double-checking meant climbing through cloud layers she could barely spare the fuel to reach. The Dateline trap also explains her cryptic final phrase, "We are on the line, 15737. If she and Noonan believed they were crossing that line at the expected time, they might have zigzagged along a phantom track, burning the last gallons in an empty quadrant. By 2024, the theory had acquired disciples. At conferences, commercial pilots admitted they still carried laminated checklists, reminding them to adjust dates on transpolar routes. An Air New Zealand captain stated, "Earhart died, so we won't forget our clocks." But the most haunting endorsement came from a declassified 1946 Coast Guard memo revealed through a FOIA request, noting that one search aircraft thought it glimpsed debris precisely where Smith's math predicted, but fog and fuel forced withdrawal. History had almost caught its quarry 8 decades earlier, then let it slide beneath the swell. Romeo swore that his autonomous drone would not repeat that mistake. Armed with synthetic aperture, sonar sharp enough to read license plates, the Hugin 6000 dove into blackness colder than liquid nitrogen, dragging behind it a curtain of high-frequency pulses. For 46 hours, it crawled 6,000 meters below the surface, translating silence into math. On January 28, 2024, at 14:07 UTC, the control room's waterfall display spit out a pattern that froze every operator mid-sentence. An asymmetrical oval appeared, 38 meters wide, with straight spars bisecting the echo-like wings. The computer assigned a 72% probability of man-made metallic structure. Romeo ordered an immediate re-sweep from a different angle. When the second pass confirmed twin tail fins, the probability jumped to 93%, and seasoned hydrographers began whispering the word Electra. But amid the triumph, a prickle of dread crept up their spines. If this was Amelia Earhart's aircraft, what else lay inside? The next 72 hours turned the team into hermits. They stitched together overlapping sonar slices, rendering a full 3D model. Landing gear folded, engine nacelles intact. The starboard door hung ajar, its rectangular shadow suggesting forced exit. Within that doorway, just visible at cutoff resolution, floated a cluster of smaller shapes, irregular enough to be bones. The moment images leaked to peer reviewers, the internet detonated. Earhart solved and Haunted Electra trended simultaneously. Anchors proclaimed that scientists found Amelia Earhart at last, while pundits fixated on the potential human remains adrift in eternal darkness. Comment sections cycled from exhilaration to horror. Was the pioneering aviator's final refuge now a macabre exhibit destined for museum display? Oceanographers cautioned against instant conclusions. Metal densities, refraction artifacts, pareidolia. Many traps could morph geology into ghosts. Nevertheless, the coordinates aligned too neatly with Liz Smith's Dateline zone to dismiss. Romeo drafted a confidential memo to maritime authorities requesting an exclusion zone around a 1 square mile box. He wrote, "If the wreck is confirmed, the site must be treated as a grave site under UNESCO conventions." That phrase spread faster than any photograph, igniting ethical debates on morning shows. Meanwhile, a deeper terror brewed in aviation. Circles. If structural scans indicated a controlled water landing, it implied Earhart and Noonan likely survived impact only to confront isolation, hypothermia, and starvation. While the civilized world searched hundreds of miles away, the psychological horror of imagining their slow vigil in a darkening fuselage captured attention more fiercely than any conspiracy tale. In May 2024, the converted research vessel Okanos, Voyager lowered its new pride, the ROV Nightingale, into waves rolling like sheet metal. Unlike the autonomous Hugin, Nightingale carried lights powerful enough to blind deep-sea amphipods and a fiber-optic tether thin as angel hair. Every meter down felt like dropping an elevator through history. Pressure climbed past 16,000 psi, ready to crush metal thinner than a coin. On the surface, journalists were banned, yet encrypted feeds still leaked to pirate live streams where millions watched green monochrome frames drift past volcanic silt. At 0511 UTC, the Electra materialized, rising from mud like a ghost ship suspended in dark air. No rust. Aluminum doesn't rust, but years of hydrothermal chemistry had stippled the skin with gray freckles. The twin tails were broken at 12-degree angles, consistent with a slow-speed ditching. Nightingale circled slowly, floodlights revealing. Shattered cockpit glass and a navigator's desk still bolted in place. A waterlogged logbook floated free, its pages waving like seaweed ribbons. The controller whispered, "We have artifacts in free drift," and articulated pincers eased the booklet into a mesh canister. But terror spiked when the camera panned inside the cabin and caught the unmistakable arc of a human jawbone nestled against a seat frame. The image lasted 3 seconds before the operator cut the feed. Yet someone on board had already mirrored the buffer. Within minutes, the still shot hit social media under the watermark Deep True 7H. Global reaction was volcanic. Relatives of Earhart demanded respectful handling. Global ethics councils convened emergency sessions. The Smithsonian's forensic team boarded a charter jet armed with rapid DNA sequencers capable of functioning in shipboard labs. By May 18th, they confirmed mitochondrial markers matching Amelia's surviving niece. The world froze, then erupted because scientists found definitive biological proof, and the terror was no longer theoretical. It was personal, intimate, undeniable. The jawbone's dental work showed starvation lines, indicating weeks of caloric deficit before death. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. Earhart hadn't died on impact, she had endured. Images of her smiling beside the Electra now clashed with visions of slow decline in a floating tomb. Cable networks played looping graphics demonstrating how cabin air pockets might have sustained the crew for days as the fuselage bobbed. The scariest speculation emerged from marine biology consultants. Sealed cabin space could also lure predatory deep dwellers once hull integrity failed. Anchors used phrases like watery siege. Romeo, visibly shaken, announced a suspension of artifact retrieval until an independent ethics board could draft guidelines. Meanwhile, Nightingale's sensors detected faint electromagnetic anomalies. Near the tail, possibly batteries, possibly something else. A short walk away lay a sealed locker labeled in faded stenciling, emergency kit. Inside, RF sonar suggested more bones and a compact film reel. If photographs from Earhart's camera had survived in sealed canisters, their development could rewrite recorded history. But handling them risked contamination. The operation morphed from treasure hunt to forensic exhumation. While Nightingale hovered in its midnight vault, another drama unfolded 400 meters southeast on Nikumaroro Atoll. Dr. Richard Pettigrew's interdisciplinary crew, archaeologists, forensic entomologists, and satellite imaging wizards parachuted onto the baking coral atoll in July 2024. Armed with LiDAR drones and ground-penetrating radar, their target was a mysterious reflective anomaly glimpsed in historical photographs from 1938 colonial surveys. Within 48 hours, drones mapped a debris fan half buried under scraggly shrubs. Twisted stringers, plexiglass shards, a heel plate stamped with the Lockheed Star logo. Even more chilling was a thimble-sized compact embossed with a stylized AE and containing residue of luxury freckle cream from the 1930s. Pettigrew radioed a code word, Castor, signaling a potential breakthrough. But what truly terrified the whole world arrived via a small black beetle. Entomologist Dr. Mara Kessler noticed the insect crawling over a white fragment. When she brushed away sand, she exposed human phalanges bleached to ivory. The team uncovered an articulated hand clutching a broken jackknife. DNA extraction later matched the mitochondrial profile of Fred Noonan's grandnephew. The implication was harrowing. Noonan had made it to land, knife in hand, perhaps fending off reef sharks during a desperate swim, only to perish within sight of coconut trees. Social media recoiled. Suddenly, Earhart's saga was no longer an abstract puzzle, but a survival horror in 2 acts. First adrift, then stranded. Satellite internet on the island faltered under traffic as millions tried to stream the expedition's daily briefings. Pettigrew's voice, shaky with adrenaline, revealed that LiDAR also detected a large metallic slab lodged in the lagoon floor, matching the dimensions of an Electra's right aileron. Currents, he theorized, had sheared off wing sections during the fuselage's slow descent, rafting debris onto Nikomororo's lee shore. This reconciled with Nightingale's sonar, which showed asymmetrical damage to the right-wing root. The unified theory gained undeniable intellectual traction. Earhart ditched, survived afloat, aircraft partially disintegrated, some components and crew reached Nikomororo, where dehydration and injuries sealed their fate. What scientists found across these two sites braided a Pacific nightmare that played out cell by cell, wave by wave. Their discoveries also resurrected an older terror, the knowledge that modern searchers in 1937 might have saved the castaways had they expanded the grid by a mere 100 miles. Commentators dissected declassified naval logs, revealing that a Catalina flying boat actually overflew Nikomororo 8 days after Earhart vanished, but never spotted survivors among glare and clouds. That mischance became headline gold. How close we came. Philosophers debated moral culpability. Aviation schools revamped emergency search doctrine. Amid the soul arching, Pettigrew's team unearthed a second horror: glass vials of morphine ampules, empty, suggesting one of the castaways endured unbearable pain before Mercy killed. Or was Mercy killed? Photos of the delicate finger. Bones lying beside shattered vials broke view count records. Humanity confronted not only adventure, but agony. The once romantic myth of Amelia Earhart now shimmered like a heat mirage, replaced by a stark, terrifying chronicle of endurance pushed past breaking. By autumn 2024, competing expeditions realized they were holding opposite halves of a single jigsaw. Romeo and Pettigrew met aboard a neutral research barge, flanked by lawyers, oceanographers, and a live video link to the Smithsonian. The conversation began tense, each side worried about intellectual property, but softened when a moderator displayed overlapping 3D grids showing Nikomororo debris vectors pointing directly back to the deep sea wreck. Physics, not prestige, was now in command. Data teams meshed sonar, LiDAR, ocean current modeling, and fragment metallurgy into a composite simulation that replayed those final 48 hours like a time-lapse nightmare. Even hardened analysts hushed as the digital Electra skimmed waves, let lift, kissed the water, and cracked open like a silver egg. Fragments spiraled into two distinct convoys. Heavy fuselage pieces sank. Buoyant wing sections drifted west-southwest in the south equatorial current, beaching on Nikomororo within 10 days. A predictive overlay matched the expedition finds with 92% accuracy. The model soon generated its most unsettling insight. Probability curves suggested Earhart survived impact with non-lethal injuries, but Noonan likely suffered compound fractures, explaining the morphine ampules and knife marks meant to fashion splints. A hush followed. Even the lawyers looked ill. Televised clips of the meeting went viral. Viewers saw respected scientists choke up while describing dehydration timelines. This emotional authenticity paradoxically boosted public trust. Brutal. Facts, however terrifying, felt cleaner than decades of speculation. The joint report, published December 1st, 2024, carried the neutral title, Interim Integrated Findings on the Disposition of NR-160210, yet it read like Gothic literature. Currents, storms, and human will conspired in tragic choreography. The narrative climaxed when modeling indicated Earhart may have launched the Electra's life raft, previously thought missing, only to watch it puncture on coral, forcing a swim through surf carrying Noonan on improvised flotation. The raft itself has not yet been located, but sonar striations on the lagoon floor mirror its dimensions. Awaiting full confirmation, global reaction pivoted from thrill to solemn reckoning. Several Pacific Island nations proposed a treaty regulating future salvage of human remains from deep water, a legal frontier previously reserved for war graves. Cultural anthropologists highlighted indigenous Kiribati oral histories that speak of white flyers washing ashore the year before World War II. Stories once dismissed now seen as corroborative echoes. At the United Nations, a motion passed, establishing the Oceanic Heritage Initiative, pledging funds to protect historically significant wrecks regardless of nationality. Meanwhile, Nightingale resumed limited operations under a tri-flag commission. ROV manipulators retrieved instrument dials, a woman's shoe, and strips of film sealed in metal canisters, now stored in cold vacuum chambers awaiting development. Every artifact promised revelations, but also moral quandaries. How much should the living gaze upon the last hours of the dead? On February 12, 2025, the Integrated Research Team released a high-fidelity timeline forged from every scrap of data, from atmospheric logs to bone isotopes. They called it Project Eclipse because it charted the moment daylight hope slipped behind the black disk of circumstance. The simulation began at 7:12 a.m. Howland local time when Earhart's fuel gauges indicated a combined remaining supply of 39 gallons, barely enough for one more hour aloft. Radio transcripts replayed her clipped phrases, each more strained. Then the last. At 7:42 she states, "Fuel running low, yet her altitude remains 1,000 feet." She is skimming waves to stretch range. Project Eclipse's weather module injects gusts recorded by a US Navy meteorological buoy. Crosswinds shove the Electra northeast, widening the dateline error. At 8:05, Noonan recalculates the sunline. The wrong date locks in doom. 5 minutes later, Earhart turns south along the infamous 157 heading, hoping to sight Howland or its sister, Baker Island. Instead, the horizon gives only merciless blue. By 8:35, the Wasp engines cough as vapor replaces fuel. She throttles. Back, trading altitude for forward motion. The aircraft descends to 12 feet, floats on ground effect, and covers another 12 nautical miles. At 8:43, she transmits her final line of position call. 10 minutes later, the propellers cease. Silence inside the cockpit is absolute, except for wind keening through the radio mast. Earhart feathers the props, flares, and commits to water. Impact velocity, 78 knots. The nose crumples, but cabin integrity holds. Seawater bursts through cockpit seams. Avionic sparks hiss. Noonan suffers a tib-fib fracture. Hemorrhage begins. Earhart deploys inflatable seat cushions as makeshift rafts. Drags Noonan through the hatch, and they cling to aluminum skin under broiling sun. Wave modeling shows the detached right wing kept the fuselage partly buoyant for 14 hours before shear bolts failed. Night falls. Sharks circle. At 6:20 on July 3rd, the wing section snaps away, creating the debris that will drift toward Nikumaroro. Earhart and Noonan lash themselves to flotation cushions. Dehydration sets in. The south equatorial current speeds them at 3 miles per hour. They reach Nikumaroro Reef flat at dawn July 6th. Noonan crawls ashore but collapses. Earhart scavenges, finding rainwater and palm fronds, and attempts signal fires that aerial searches miss by less than 20 meters. For 19 days, she journals on navigation paper, later found in debris, recording temperatures, ration counts, and a final undated entry. Fred slipping away, all prayers forward. On July 22nd, with storms approaching, she drags Noonan's remains beneath a shrub, covers him with parachute silk, and returns to the shoreline, perhaps hoping rescue planes will spot her. The record ends here, but isotope ratios in Nightingale's jawbone suggest death by electrolyte collapse within another week. The simulation ends on a still frame of the reef under sunset. The screen text reading, "We were too late." Audiences at the public unveiling wept openly. Even battle-hardened journalists described the presentation as something beyond tragedy, a real-time, slow-motion account of hope breaking. The curtain of mystery has finally lifted, but what remains is not comfort. It is awe-edged with fear. When scientists found the evidence spelling out Amelia Earhart's drawn-out ordeal in classrooms from Tokyo to Toronto, children once drew heroic portraits of Earhart soaring above clouds. Now teachers hesitate, worried the harrowing epilogue may eclipse her inspiration. Yet survival psychology experts argue the updated story empowers future aviators with hard truths about risk, endurance, and error. World Airlines instituted Earhart protocols, mandatory cross-checking of date data on any transoceanic leg, accompanied by a brief moment of silence broadcast to passengers each July 2nd. A memorial beacon installed on Nikumaroro flashes. Coordinates in Morse code every dawn, visible to satellites and symbolically to the soul of history. The Pacific Floor wreck, meanwhile, is designated a marine cultural reserve. Only non-invasive digital scanning is allowed. Its Blackwater Cathedral left undisturbed. Museums wrestle with how to exhibit 3D prints of interior cabin spaces without veering into spectacle. The Smithsonian chose minimalism, a single looped hologram of Earhart's final radio wave displayed beside the steel jawbone replica, both illuminated in quiet blue. Visitors report goosebumps. For women in STEM, the narrative pivot is paradoxically motivating. Enrollment in aerospace engineering programs spiked 8% in 2025, and scholarships now carry Earhart's new epitaph, "She landed anyway." But the cultural ripple expands beyond gender. Philosophers compare the saga to the ancient myth of Icarus inverted, not hubris punished, but bravery extended too far into wilderness. Amelia Earhart's story is no longer just about a disappearance. It's a chilling, awe-inspiring testament to human endurance pushed to its absolute limits, and a stark reminder of the ocean's unforgiving power. It's a story of hope, of desperate struggle, and ultimately of a scientific triumph that brought painful yet undeniable closure. So what does this new chapter in Amelia Earhart's legacy mean to you? How does it change the way you see her story and the relentless spirit of exploration? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to uncover more untold stories that rewrite history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss what we unravel next.